What's good? Um, Glorious day. It's another good day and whatnot. Um, Overall, it's Friday, so I can't complain. That's why I got a hat on indoors. I just like my hat. All right, don't hate. Okay. Anyway, pretty much continuing off from chapter 20 over into 21, Acts 21. I'm only gonna do 3 chapters today because it's a Friday and it might not be 11:30 right now. And I might be very close to my deadline for my personal goal. But as long as I get it done today, that's all that matters, right? Because if I stay consistent and I stay not motivated, but disciplined, um, it'll help. It'll help the Lord. Yeah, I almost said I'll help myself, but it really won't. Forcing myself to do this is more of me just getting more attuned to the Lord, helping with me and His relationship overall, and also helping others. It's like a wombo combo, literally mixing up the whole thing, right? So continuing on, Paul on his journey to Jerusalem, he visits James in chapter 21, and pretty much the people of Jerusalem don't think, Paul is actually like that guy or whatnot, or that he's like even ordained by Christ, right? Um, but pretty much James ends up recommending that Paul go with 4 men who are under vow and take these men and purify himself with them and pay their expenses so they can shave their head. And I don't know the cultural significance of this, but apparently it purifies them, right? Continuing on, Paul ends up doing this and somehow still gets end up arrested at the temple and whatnot. So he gets arrested at the temple after 7 days. The Jews from Asia, where he literally just came, are just creating riots and whatnot, and end up seeking to kill him. Right? Luckily, the centurion guy, or what's his name? Yeah, the centurions. I was right on the money. End up coming through and whatnot and saving Paul. Well, saving by arresting him, trying to see what the people think his crimes are for the most part. And then pretty much they end up taking him up into the, what's it called? The Tribune, or the barracks. They end up going to the barracks or whatnot. They're going to the barracks, and Paul's like, "Let me preach to these people," right? And that goes into chapter 22, right? And so pretty much, chapter 22 ends up starting with Paul just saying he's talking about a story, right? Pretty much talked about him being a persecutor of the believers and everything, and how that one day on his way to Damascus, God shone a very bright light from the sky and was like, "Hey, why are you persecuting our people?" Right? And Paul's or Saul at this point, it's like, "God, who are you?" Right? And he's like, "I'm Jesus Christ of Nazareth." I'm telling you, I'd be losing it. Oh, the guy whose people I've been persecuting this whole time is the God of gods, or not even of gods, but the God, like the OG, right? Um, but at this point, he's like, what should I do, right? And the Lord's like, continue on to Damascus, right? But at this point, he's blind and everything, and he has people lead him over to Damascus, right? And the guy Ananias, a devout man, obviously, right, ends up coming and healing Paul of his eyesight and everything, right? And then Paul ends up saying, how Jesus told him to go away from Jerusalem because Jerusalem wasn't going to believe him, and pretty much to go teach to the Gentiles of Asia, right? Or not to Asia, not of Asia, but end up Asia eventually, but the Gentiles in general, right? And this is where the Jews got mad, like, you know what? Shut up, Paul. We don't like Gentiles, and we don't like you, right? And they keep going and everything, and the Romans are just like, bro, get Paul. Hey, we're not doing this, right? We're just gonna flog him and question him, right? Flog and ask questions later, right? So, as they're about to flog him, Paul's like, "So y'all gonna flog a Roman citizen, right? Without knowing what they did?" And the Romans, or not the Romans, the people were just like, oh, you're a Roman citizen? And they're shaking in their boots and everything, right? And Paul's like, indeed, I am a Roman citizen, right? So they end up just releasing him at that point, right? And just unbound him, right? And then pushing on into chapter 23, our last chapter for today, sadly. Sorry, guys, I'm irresponsible. I'm so grown. But pretty much it starts with Paul talking to the council after he gets released and whatnot. And he's like, guys, he's lived his life before God. And pretty much Ananias, the high priest, is about to strike him. And he's like, whoa. Let. Then Paul said to him in verse 3, God is about to strike you, you whitewashed wall. Are you are you sitting to judge me according to the law, and yet contrary to the law, you ordered me to be struck? And then pretty much the people continue to say, do you revile God's high priest, right? And God, not God, but Paul's like, I did not know, brothers, that he was the high priest, for it is written, you shall not speak evil over rule every people, right? Because at this point, Paul's an apostle. He's a messenger, right? A messenger. If you get the reference, you get the reference. He's a messenger, all right? Um, but keeping it going, Paul then, sees that, the crowd's a little split, what can I say? He has that divine eye because God gave it to him, right? He sees, a little bit of Sadducees over there, a little bit of Pharisees over there, and he's like, guys, I've been a Pharisee for most of my life. I'm telling you, Paul's pulling out all the stops, right? He's like, I grew up a Pharisee, right? And, he ends up getting the Pharisees' favor, right? And the Pharisees are like, I don't know, this Paul guy, he might be okay, right? He might be valid, right? And the Sadducees were like, what do they say? They're pretty much against the idea and whatnot, right? And then pretty much the Lord, following that night, says, take courage, for as you have testified to the facts about me in Jerusalem, so you must testify also in Rome, right? And that happened in verse 11 of chapter 23, right? And then pretty much after that, the next day or the next few days, there's a plot to kill Paul, right? And pretty much at this point, people, or 40 of the Jews specifically, got together and organized, and they said, we're not going to eat or drink anything until this man is dead, right? They said on everything, right? Until this man is dead, right? So they ended up saying that whatnot. And the son of Paul's sister, all right, heard of the ambush and went to what's his name? The tribune, right? And ended up telling them the information. And, the tribune was like, oh, appreciate you, but don't tell anybody else's information, right? This is highly classified. Okay. And he keeps pushing. And the tribune is pretty much like, you know what, let's get Paul out of here and listen him to Antipatris, right? And they end up sending a note to Caesarea, where Felix the governor is, and that pretty much concludes what we have for today. So I hope you enjoyed what we've read today. Hopefully y'all get to go read it yourselves, get a little taste of God's word today. Because even if, it's late, even if, you tired, the Lord's going to open his arms up to you either way. So go accept his word, right? Read the word. Deuces.